Well, it's the chin bit, but it's something we have to really recognise and bear in mind as educationalists when we're trying to influence people in the area of values and ethics. And the first existential challenge is a really fundamental one, and it's to do with the nature of man. Right through the history of philosophy, psychology, literature, there's a debate about, is man naturally good, or is man naturally selfish, the kind of Freudian view? It's a very contested area, and that is still going on. But certain things are emerging from cognitive science that suggest certain things. And one key thing is that our character is influenced quite heavily by early socialization experiences and genetic factors. For example, personality configurations. So whilst the nature-nurture issue is still debated, it's becoming increasingly difficult to argue against the strong genetic impact on character development, however we want to define this. And the big point here for us in teaching values and ethics is that some people may simply be more neurologically wired towards behaving ethically than others. And what we mean here is that they are perhaps more disposed to following agreed ethical codes as compared to their own particular ways of framing reality. Quite simply, some people may be more naturally wired to deviant, even criminal behaviour. Now, this is a contested area, but it's something that we have to bear in mind, that we may not be able to teach all people to take on ethical codes. The second challenge, and again, this is one that many people may not really take on board. We have a kind of notion that the mind is a fairly stable entity, that it's a very intelligent thing. But in fact, contrary to what we tend to assume, the normal state of the mind is chaos, according to that very difficult name to pronounce, Csikszentmihalyi, pretty famous psychologist. And evidence from evolutionary psychology, cognitive neuroscience supports this kind of notion that the mind is not a well-organized, stable, rational entity. And if you look at the quote by Michael Apter, it feels very much like that is the case if one is introspective about how one feels and one's mood changes and the way perception is a kind of fluid entity. And that again means that it's kind of difficult to get students to develop totally stable frames on reality. And finally, just to add another complication, is that society itself is becoming more complex. It's rapidly changing, it's becoming increasingly volatile, and we're told this all the time. And what this means is people are exposed to multiple frames of reality. And a possible outcome is an increasing movement towards value relativism. Even as far back as 1978, Raffs et al. Made this statement that the pace and complexity of life has so exacerbated the problem of deciding what is good and what is right, worthy, desirable, etc., that it's bewildering and it's difficult for people to actually decide what is worth value. And finally, to add the icing on the cake in this aspect, is that in the professions, and certainly engineering is very much at the forefront here, that issues and problems are likely to emerge from unintentional long-range consequences of the new technologies. And if one really wants to go into some detail here, one only has to read the work of Joel Garreau in Radical Evolution and Raymond Kurzweil, The Singularity is Near. But the basic thesis is this, that as certain key areas of technology, genetics, robotics, IT, nanotechnology. I just put the cartoon in as a bit of fun. But as these kind of come together, what is referred to as the singularity, that there will be massive, massive changes in the nature of human life and society. You know, notions of living for extended periods of time, having bionic parts, will all create massive ethical issues that will have to be negotiated. So, here's the paradox. On one level, that our curriculum goals of imbuing students with sound values and developing ethical behaviour in the workplace is far more challenging than other desired technical learning outcomes that we have to deal with. And this may be even more and more challenging. However, at the same time, whilst this is a bigger challenge in this modern world, it's increasingly necessary, or more necessary than ever, to have an education that addresses these ethical issues, and certainly the professions will have to address these more and more and more. So that's the so chim bit, and we're now going to move on to say, right, given this, what is our most viable and potentially effective pedagogic strategies for the teaching of ethics?